What up, y'all? It's T-Tar, and today we're going to be talking about Pokemon that might Mega Evolve in Pokemon Legends EA. As the features are turning, we're going to look at all the Kalos Pokemon and realistically figure out which ones might Mega Evolve. There's two factors really to which Pokemon would be revisited. One, if it's a Pokemon that's ass, right? Like for example, Mawile, it wasn't a very usable Pokemon, and so they Mega Evolved it, gave it 100 BST, and gave it huge power. It's one of the strongest Megas now. That's factor one. Factor two is if it's a popular Pokemon. That's when you get Mewtwo, Charizard, Tyranitar, Metagross, Salamence. So that's what we're looking for. Well, factor three is to figure out just how Game Freak would think, and I got you covered on that. So of course, starting off, we've got the three Kalos starters. Absolutely did get Megas. I already made a video on this, and Greninja might even get 2 Megas, Mega X and Mega Y. You gotta think, they're bound to revisit that XY crap. Another Pokemon somewhere is getting them. Alright, so going down the list, the first one we come to is Diggersby. Okay, here's the thing. I don't think Diggersby is Mega Evolving. I know I just said 10 seconds ago the ass Pokemon would get them too. This one we get into the way Game Freak would think about stuff, and it's that okay, the reason Pokemon like Mawile and even Pokemon like Heracross and Pinsir were given Mega Evolutions is because Game Freak is stubborn. I talked about this a few videos ago, right? Where Game Freak doesn't want to retcon stuff. And so since they built up a world where they made it impossible for them to introduce new cross evolutions, they decided the next best thing we can do to fix certain Pokemon was Mega Evolve them. That's really why you got Mega Mawile. But then, as of Legends Arceus, Game Freak gave in. They folded their cards and introduced cross evolutions for the first time, like King Gambit and Wordeer. So now that Game Freak has already given that up, at least the way I see it is it lowers the chances for Pokemon like Diggersby to jump straight to a Mega Evolution. What you might see in these games is Diggersby evolving further back then. That because of the savage times where it was in that Lumiose habitat, maybe defending its territory from trainers and all, maybe it unlocked a further evolution the same way Stantler is said to have had stronger psychic powers back then because it was living in more savage times. So you could get a cross evolution in the same region, but that's a topic for a different video. And so I wanted to give you the explanation to how I see Game Freak looking at these things, and so I don't think Diggersby would get a Mega. You can kind of imagine a Diggersby evolution, right? The fists on its ears grow even bigger, that it's like on all fours. Next up is the Talonflame family. Talonflame has a chance of getting a Mega. It is like the staple of the Kalos region. Game Freak put a lot of love into Talonflames. One, it was the first regional bird that wasn't a normal type, and two, it's the first fire flying type that isn't Charizard or Ho-Oh or Moltres, which are like the big ones. That's why they also gave it a signature ability, Gale Wings. Sometimes Megas become a little redundant in terms of the ability. It sounds like if Talonflame Mega Evolved, it would become more streamlined the way its feathers look to make it capable of moving faster, and it would just get Gale Wings again. Whoa! Just doing a quick search, here's a cool concept for a Mega Talonflame, where they inverted its color scheme. That is so good. It's all black. You see, other takes are feeding more into the way Talonflame looks, given that crest crown here makes it look like a king. And this works for a Mega Talonflame too, but changing its colors to black, and you see those fiery talons, that would be amazing to see animated. So Talonflame, I'll give you a check mark. Next up is the Vialon family. Vialon's a Pokemon they gave like 20 different forms to for all kinds of variants around the world. It would sound a bit complicated to give it a Mega because Game Freak would have to design then 20 versions of the Mega. Not that they'd be different, but their outer color would probably be different. And you know, they did give Beedrill a Mega, which is the equivalent of Vialon in Gen 1. But you know what? I'm gonna give Vialon the no. Remember, they'd have a limited amount of Megas to put in this game. I almost want to say Vialon is less likely. I've got to try being strict on this list. Next up is Litleo and Pyroar. Okay. See, Pyroar is a strong image of Kalos. It sounds a lot like Pyroar should get a Mega Evolution, and that sounds incredible. Mega Pyroar. But I want to put Pyroar in the same situation as Diggersby, where they don't have to jump straight to a Mega. I think it'd be interesting if Litleo, who evolves into Pyroar, who's the same Pokemon with just two different different forms, that the two genders evolve into Pokemon with different names, fully leaning into being a lion and lioness. And that way it makes a pretty fun evolution tree. So, you know, the same way only female Combi evolve into Vespiquen, only female Pyroar would evolve into a certain third stage. and then male Pyroar another stage. I think that would be more fun to give to Pyroar than Mega Evolving it. So I'm gonna say no. And next up is the Flabebe family. This is a very difficult one to say. Florges, it's been a while, so recalling Kalos might be hazy, but the Florges family is very iconic for Kalos. It's the first Pokemon that was properly introduced with the fairy type, right? That wasn't a re-type of an earlier Pokemon like Jigglypuff or Azumarill. This was the first fairy type you could find in the game. And then also, it's the image of AZ's Pokemon that he lost in the war. So I want to say it's very likely Florges would get a Mega Evolution, and Florges' BST is 552. That would make it 652. My only issue on whether Florges might get a Mega is when I think about AZ's Floette's importance in the story. Since they'd want Floette to be relevant, to introduce 2 stages beyond Floette would start to take away from it unintentionally. But here's something they could do. What if when Florges Mega Evolves, regardless of which of the Floettes you have, that flower pattern turns black and red and looks a lot like the Eternal Flower? And so what they can do is not take AZ's Floette out of relevancy this way by showing that when Florges Mega Evolves, the power it leans into, AZ's Floette has it from the start. And so whatever the answer to that mystery would be could help answer the mystery of Mega Evolution. Something like whatever the core of what Mega Evolution really is, AZ and his Floette had it early on. Because there's something to that Eternal Flower, right? So some context with the Eternal Flower is 1, his Floette didn't gain that Eternal Flower when it was brought back to life. It always looked that way. That's why I brought up the Battle Bond idea. But you know, that flower that the Floette has is described as something that no longer exists in modern times. So something along the lines of some ancient flower. But there is something to that flower, because Floette uses this move called Light of Ruin, which sounds like the ultimate weapon, right? This Light of Ruin. Whether the Ruin is the Yveltal power or the Xerneas power, right? Immortality is not necessarily a good thing. But then, while they did say this flower no longer exists, if you play Oraz, there is one Eternal Flower that you can find in the game. You can't pick it up, but if you go to Sootopolis, the same place that they say some man visited them a long time ago, some tall man, they're talking about AZ, you can see one of them in the other flowers. And we know AZ's Floette isn't dead, unless that was his Floette just sleeping there. Because I think Oraz takes place before Oraz, but that's not probably the case. That's somehow another Eternal Flower. So imagine it was something like this, and when Florges Mega Evolved, their flower, overflowing with power, turned into that, or something like that. And so that flower just being there would be like the flower that was on some ancient Mega Florges. Long after it passed away, it's there in Sootopolis. You can explain just what's going on with the Eternal Flower that way. You know what, Florges? I'll give you the yes. Alright, I'm not gonna be able to finish this video. Make sure I'll shank that like button and we'll go through the rest of the Kalos Pokemon and see who's deserving of one in the next video. This includes Aegis Slash, Goodrub, all the way to Hoopa, Volcanion and all. I'll tell you my thoughts on that. So yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.